and welcome to Zero Make. 2 weeks ago, I made a DIY LED sign for my sister for her birthday, and I'll be honest, I wasn't super happy with the video. The project itself was super cool and it turned out awesome, but I felt like the video that I uploaded was missing a few key shots and it needed better explanations. Sadly, I'd already finished the project, so I couldn't go back and get the shots that I wanted. So I uploaded what I had, and I figured maybe I'll make it again in the future. Then I got this message on Instagram, and I was like, well, now I have to redo it. So thank you. You have given me a reason to redo this project. This time I'm going to make it for myself because I love how the first one turned out, and I'll get to include the shots that I felt like I missed the first time around and improve upon the first design. So here is the new and improved how to make a neon sign using EL wire. This time around, I'm going to make it smaller, and instead of doing Tanjiro and Nezuko from Demon Slayer, I am going to do Killua from Hunter x Hunter because he is so adorable. I love him. He's one of my favorite characters. So let's jump in. Starting off with materials, you're going to need 2 AA batteries and some EL wire. This packet of EL wire I have here has 3 different colors, but I'm only going to be using the blue because Killua just reads as blue to me. Like, if the character was a color, they'd be blue. You also need some super glue and a drill with a drill bit. The last 2 materials that you need is your picture that you want to make into a sign. I recommend a line drawing because that's going to be easier to convert into a line sign. And some picture frames. If you remember the first time around, I used a wooden board that was actually the back of a picture frame. So this time I went to Michael's and I grabbed a packet of picture frames. Make sure that it is wood on the back of your picture frame, not cardboard, because that's not gonna work. I also mentioned in the first video that people have used canvas or plexiglass before, but I like the thin wood board because it's stiffer than the canvas, so it's easier to pull the wire tight, but it's softer than plexiglass, so it's easy to drill into. Also, the signs we're making are going to be framed, so it's not like you need to be able to see through the surface that we're using to see like the wall or a window behind it like a lot of people do for neon signs. So now that I've opened up these picture frames, you can see that the wood back is, well, it looks like wood. There's no coloring there like the first time around it was black. This time around it's brown, the color of wood. So I'm going to need to paint these, but I'm not sure if I want to do black or I want to do white. As you can see here, the black absorbs the light, so it disappears into the background and really makes the EL wire pop. Whereas the white reflects the light, so you can really see the background piece. But in the daylight, the white actually looks better with the EL wire versus the black, because the black kind of hides the EL wire a little bit. Since the white looks better in the daylight and the black looks better in the night, I'm just going to paint half of them white and half of them black, and we will compare the results in the end. So here I've laid out my wooden boards on some cardboard, and I'm going to paint them with my white and my black paint, doing my best to cover up all of the wood there and make the surface as smooth as possible. I found that the thick Jelly Basics paint worked best for the black, and the gesso worked best for the white. Basically, the thicker the paint, the easier it's going to be to spread and make a smooth surface versus a thin white paint that I'm painting over here, which not only will need several layers, but also will show any of the divots and textures of the wood. Now, while those dry, I'm going to show you how to take your line drawing and turn it into something you can put onto the board. The first time around, I did this picture prep on the piece of paper, but this time, so you can see it better and it makes more sense, I'm going to draw it up on the iPad and hopefully it's easier to see what I'm doing. So here I'm just grabbing a blue pen tool. That first mark was a little too big, so we're going to shrink the size of it. And I'm going to trace the lines that I want for Killua. Obviously, I'm using blue because that's the color that I'm going to make Killua out of the wire. But the point of this step is to simplify our line drawing as much as possible. The fewer lines we need to show the character, the better. And also, the wire that we're using can't do super small circles or thick and thin lines. It can only do one thickness. So, as I do the eyes here, I have to take that into account. I definitely can't do those half moons in the center of the eyes, but maybe I can get this small reflection. And as for the eyelashes, I can't do thick lines, so instead I'm going to do 2 thin lines to try and show the eyelash little flick. Another thing I should point out is that the eyebrows show underneath the hair. So when I do that stitch, I'm just going to do it as one solid line instead of stopping at each intersection point. Now onto the hair. So there are way too many strands of hair on Killua's forehead because of his bangs. And I know for a fact that the wire is not going to be able to show all of those, and it's going to be really, really difficult. So here's where the simplification and part of the point of even drawing this out comes into play, because I'm going to make fewer strands of hair on his bangs. So as you can see here, I got rid of a lot of the little points, and that's going to make this project a lot easier for me. So now let's just check to see how our line drawing looks without the other drawing behind it. And it kind of looks like that top corner is missing something. And also his eyes look a little too blank. So I'm going to add that little triangle in the top corner and the little reflection circle. Hopefully I'll be able to do that with the wire. So now that we've got our simplified line drawing, I'm going to show you where the holes are going to be drilled. Let's just switch the color of our pin to a different color. So let's do red and make the size of it a little bit bigger. And let's give him some polka dots. Basically, wherever a line starts and ends, you put a hole. So starting at the bottom edge, I'm just going to put a dot at every end and start point of each line. So as you can see, some of the lines end by intersecting with another line. That's totally fine. We're just going to put a hole there. If you find any lines that you can actually connect without drilling a hole, I recommend doing that because you really don't want to have to deal with threading it and gluing it in place. It's way easier if you can make the lines longer. Now we've reached the eye portion, so there's going to be a lot of drill holes around this bit, so just be really careful that none of them are touching each other because that's just going to make one big hole. And now about the spiky hair, or any parts where your lines end in a point, you're going to put 2 drill holes there. That's because we're doing the start and end of the line, and your wire's not going to be able to make a sharp point like that, so that's basically a start and end point. So you need 2 drill holes like I'm doing here. So in short, put a drill hole wherever a line starts and ends, and put 2 drill holes at any sharp point. So we're finally done planning. I have 118 holes to drill. This is going to take a really long time. Let's print out this picture and get started. Also, just for you guys, I did the layout of the Demon Slayer picture too, so I will toss that on screen real fast and you can screenshot it if you want to do the Demon Slayer one instead of Killua. Now that the design is done, let's go check on our drying boards. So it looks like they're dry. Let's just bring them inside, tape our picture to the front of the board, and we can drill our holes. Because we already decided where the holes were going to be ahead of time, we basically just have to drill holes into every single dot that we made. Some tips or pointers that I have for this part of the project is that you should really drill from the front of the board towards the back, because as you can see here, as the drill goes through, there's a lot of excess in the back, and you don't want that ugly looking part on the front of the board. So yes, drill from the front. Also, another pointer, I guess, is make sure that none of the drill holes are going to get in the way of your frame. So here I'm just marking where the border of my frame is, and that way I can drill holes and weave the wire without getting in the way of the frame. Another tip I have for you, or something you have to watch out for, is when you're drilling the points, those points that have the 2 holes on them, make sure that you don't accidentally drill those holes together. So make sure they're far enough apart that when you thread your EL wire through, you're not accidentally going to rip that little intersection out. Because that almost happened to me a few times. The last thing I want to point out is watch out if there's any metal pieces on the back of the board that you don't drill a hole where that metal piece is, because it obviously won't go through, and then you'll just have a weird hole in your board. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of holes. It kind of looks like the board has high school acne. Anyone else? No? Okay, now we can move on to weaving the EL wire through the board. Let's just grab our wire and unwrap it. And take this little cap on the end off, because that gets in the way while we're threading it, and start weaving it through. Like the first time around, we're going to weave it through before gluing it down, just to make sure that we have enough wire before we make it permanent. I recommend starting in a spot that is closest to the edge, or in this case the bottom, because that's where we're going to stick our battery pack, and these wires have to plug into the battery pack. Unlike the first time around when I put the battery pack on the back of the sign, this time around I'm going to put the button on the bottom of the frame facing outward. That way you can just turn it on and off from the outside, not having to take the frame off and turn them on and rehang it back up just to see it lit. This way it's a lot easier to turn on and off. While weaving your wire, you want to thread it through the holes that are the closest to it. This way you don't waste any of the wire length, and most of the light up wire is in the front. Remember, leave a lot of extra wire if there's bends and curves in your line, and go ahead and make those bends and curves in the line now. We're just not going to glue it in place quite yet. So you see, we've got one corner piece that we've bent into shape. That's his collar. Let's keep weaving some lines. Alright, I'm going to skip ahead a bit to the eyes, just because I want to show you how I'm weaving the eyebrows first before I'm doing the hair. Because if you remember from the picture, the eyebrows show through under the hair, so I'm just going to do it like the way it looks. Now with the eyes done, let's move on to the hair. So the hair is actually really easy to thread. You basically just go back and forth like a zigzag, weaving in and out of all the holes you made. One thing to pay attention to is when threading those hair points, you're going to want to hold the wire and pull it tight like you see here. Now we're going to do one of the longer lines. This is the chin or face line, and there's a small curve up at the top, so we're going to make sure that we have space for that to touch the other line. There's a point at the bottom, so we'll fold that. It also touches those two other lines. It curves around, and then it ends up at the hair. So I'm just going to make all those bends and curves in it, but I'm not going to glue it down yet. No! I ran out of wire and I have like 3 more lines to do. Why the heck does this keep happening to me? It happened in the first one and now it's happening again. I guess I have to grab a 3rd piece of wire just to do these 3 lines. Oh well. Good thing I have more wire. Now that we are done weaving our wire, it's time to glue it to the board. We are using super glue because it won't melt the wire like hot glue would, but it dries faster than tacky glue. When super gluing, try to use as little super glue as possible and make sure to press and hold the wire to the board because it's that contact between the wire and the board that's going to make it stick. If there's space there, it's not gonna stick. I'm not sure if that's true if you use gel super glue. For simple curves, 1 dot in the center should be enough. Basically, a dot at any corner or curve is good enough. You don't have to glue the whole wire down, you just want to hold it in place. I don't have a whole lot of other tips for this gluing portion, so let's turn on the music again and speed through the rest of the gluing. Alright, we're done gluing, so let's put the board in the frame, attach the battery pack. I'm going to use some double-sided tape to do this. I might glue it later on, but I want to make sure the weights center before I make it permanent. And let's see how it looks. Wait a minute, I didn't just do the black one. Remember, I painted some whiteboards too? Well, I did a white Killua too. Let's see how they look side by side. I mean, they both look pretty cool, but let me know in the comments down below which one's your favorite. Do you like the black background or the white background more? Since I made 2 signs, I'm going to be selling one of them on... And this is where I'm going to be selling any of the extra items that I make. So a link to my is in the description or on the channel page. Feel free to go check it out if you want to buy something that I've made. Maybe it's on there. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Also, remember to hit that like button. Comment down below, white or black background, which one's your favorite. Share this video with other anime fans or neon sign lovers. And please subscribe because I post every Friday at 3. Thank you for watching!